are going to be talking about another topic today. This is what I've been planning on doing for quite a while. It's something I enjoy doing, and we'll get right into it. It's about brewing your own beer. It's a fun hobby. I actually like brewing beer more than I like drinking beer. I love beer. I love drinking beer. But I probably only have 2 to 4 beers a month. I don't have too many. But I really like brewing beer. And when I drink a beer, I like a good beer. And if you brew your own beer, you can brew exactly what you like every time, over and over. And you can keep making it better and better. And then you got a little better quality control of what you're doing. So to start off with, this won't be everything you need to know. This is going to be a series. I know for a fact there'll at least minimum be 5 videos to this series. It'll probably be about double that, and they'll come and go as we go on. But on how to brew your own beer. But this one is just an informational, high-level view, looking down at brewing and about that and everything like that. When you brew beer, you have to decide first and foremost what type of beer you're going to buy, because that'll determine everything. There's 2 types of beer out there. There's ales and there's lagers, okay? Most people in America are used to lagers. Those are your Budweiser, your Coors, your Millers, and everything like that. And in all actuality, there's not much difference between a Budweiser and a Miller. People are like, oh man, yes, there's differences. But realistically, about how they brew the beer, there's really not much difference in it compared to an ale and a lager. But the difference is lagers use a yeast that are bottom fermenting, and they have to be cooler. Generally, it's between about anywhere from your low 50s to mid 60s. Right in there is your sweet stop for your ferment. I'll go over all that later, what you do when you ferment, so don't worry about that. Ales, on the other hand, they're top fermenting yeast, and they can take warmer, and those are mid 60 to mid 70s, okay? So most people do ales because you don't have to do anything special. Or what people do is they'll brew ales most of the year long, but they'll brew lagers during the winter when they have a cooler spare bedroom, a garage. You don't want it too cold now, or the basement, because if you have a basement that's, around 60, 65, hey, that's okay. It could be a little better, but still fine, And the big difference between lagers and ales, if you don't know, is this is general terms. Ales are generally more full-bodied, full-flavored, just all-around bodied beer, where lagers are crisp, clean, and smooth for the most part. Now, ales can be smooth too, but not quite as smooth as lagers, in my opinion. So those are the main difference of what you want to do. And what some people do when they get lagers is they actually make a lagering fridge. You can buy a little device, and I have one. You plug in the wall, you plug I got a small upright freezer for this. You plug the freezer into this, you set your temperature, and I set it to, 64 degrees or whatever I'm optimal for that yeast I'm doing. And you got a thermometer that goes in there, and it turns that freezer on and off to maintain that temperature. And then you're perfect. But you don't need that. You do not need that. You can brew great beer, especially an ale. Spare room, spare closets. What I do, just your closet you can have now, is our spare bedroom bathtub. I put it in there, close the curtain, I'm done. If you don't have a spare room or closet that's really out of sight, not much light or anything like that, don't fret. As simple as throwing a towel over your fermenting when you're done. You can also take a brown paper bag, cut a hole in the top, and put it over the top. That's fine too. So don't thread it. And one question I get a lot about brewing beer is people say, what about the Mr. Beer Kit? What about the Mr. Beer Kit? That's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the Mr. Beer Kit. A lot of purists and people that brew beer, you can't. The only difference is they kind of spoon feed you all the way, and I'll go over kind of something in a minute similar to that, where it's hard to do a lot of variance with it. Whereas you get to all the way to the other spectrum, the all grain is you're controlling 100% of everything. So, but Mr. Beer makes great kits. Now, most brewers I know start off with Mr. Beer and go on from there. But do not throw that Mr. Beer container away even if you go on to something else, because I kept mine, my friend had an extra one, I got his, and that's how I brew a lot of my lagers. Instead of wasting that big freezer, the big fridge, the Mr. Beers are 2.5 gallons, which is considered about a half batch most of the time. A normal batch is 5 gallons, which is about 2 cases of beer, just so you can put it in perspective. And that fits in my fridge. I'm good to go. So, you know, it makes it easy to make lagers all year long. So we're going to get into a little bit about brewing beer right here and the overlook of it, and then I'll show you a couple items here and there as we go along. The number one key, if I could talk about when you brew your own beer, the number one thing is sanitary. And some of the stuff I'll say, hey, it'll make more sense later, and this is another one. Anything you do after the boil, okay? There's cleaning and sanitizing. I should have talked about this first. Totally separate. Cleaning is making sure stuff's clean. Sanitizing, make sure everything's dead. Okay. After you boil, and I'll go over all that later, everything that touches that liquid has to be sanitized. Has to. Before it has to be cleaned. If you sanitize it, that's fine. But the boiling will sanitize everything. So anything after that has to be sanitized and sanitized well. You can sanitize as easy as, you know, in like a 5-gallon bucket of water or 1 or 2 tablespoons of bleach and letting it soak for 15-20 minutes and you're done. But you have to rinse everything to get the bleach off. Now there's rinse-free sanitizers, Star San, Iodophor are the 2 big ones that you literally fill it up, let it sit for a little bit, drain everything out, you're fine. You don't have to rinse. So that's why most beers people get, you know, something called Star San or Iodophor. They're about the same. Iodophor is a little cheaper. Iodophor is iodine based, so it can stain plastics. So you have to be aware of that. So just so you know that. But it just stains it. It doesn't do any permanent damage or anything like that. So sanitizing is key, because otherwise you'll get off flavors. You're going to start hearing that a lot. Off flavors, off flavors. You can get a lot of off flavors from doing a lot of different things. And that generally when you get what's called a skunk batch. Skunk batch is when you open your beer and it smells like a skunk. You'll know. It's like, ooh, you know, that's generally from unsanitized. Now, anything that can live in alcohol cannot kill you. Okay, I'm not going to take a responsibility, but I've never heard of anybody dying. Now, you can get real sick, throwing up and everything like that, consuming some funky stuff, you know. But pretty much if it can live in the alcohol, it really can't kill you. But you can get sick, but almost every time, if you have a bad batch, you're going to smell it way before you even taste it. So, yeah, and then if you taste it, it'll be, whoo, and a little bit won't do anything. So you're not going to chug down something that's going to gag you. So, yeah, so sanitizing. Next thing you have to worry about is water. Excuse me. When you have water, you need good water. If you can drink your water out of the tap straight and you're fine, you're okay. You know, go for it. The only thing I would do is boil the water and let it cool down again before you use it, just to make sure everything living in there is dead, your chlorine and all that stuff like that. You can also fill your whatever amount of water you're going to need up. Just leave it sit for a day or 2. You're good to go. Or you can go to one of those filter places and get your water. This is what most of my friends do. There's a place in town, they're all over. You know, it's like 15, 20 cents a gallon. They just fill their containers up and they're good to go. So, yeah, now I have what's called a Berkey gravity feed filter. If you go online and you search for Big Berkey, it's just a big gravity fed water filter system. And that's all I use. And I started a day or 2 before and I just fill the water up I need and I'm fine. So, but water is key. If your water tastes funky, your beer will taste funky too. So water is key, but do not use distilled water. Do not use distilled water. It is just too dead for use. There is a lot of places that say use distilled, use distilled. I suppose you could, but I would not use distilled water. No. Water has a key, is key. Water is most of what you have in your beer. You can take the exact same recipe, the exact same brewer, the exact same ingredients, brew it here in North Texas, brew it up in Milwaukee. It'll taste totally separate because of the water, nothing else. Same thing with the stuff you have here. You have a beer brewed here, like some brewed here, and then some brewed over in the United Kingdom. Some of your ales, they'll taste totally separate. Same thing with your some of your lagers, that are from your Germany, Austria, Poland area. We got your Pilsner. Those are good. Those are very good beers. Will taste different brewing them here, just because of the water, nothing else. So some recipes will have you add stuff to make it harder and softer and stuff like that. That's all they're doing they're trying to mimic a flavor that they want you to get. And speaking of recipe, when you start off, follow a recipe. Always, first few times you brew, follow a recipe. And what that'll do is that'll give you confidence. And I would also, if you know a beer style you like, and you've gone out and you've tried this style, this beer, even if it's a make and model of a beer, let's say, I'll pick one out there, a mainstream one. I don't know, a Samuel Adams, an ale. I don't know. I'll just throw that out there. Killian's Red. Okay, there will be clone recipes for those, and you're fine. Just remember, when you're starting off, ales will be a lot easier than lagers. Okay, and on that, the darker the beer, the more flavor, the more impurities and off flavor it hides. So what I really recommend people is, if you know a darker beer you like, whether a porter, a stout, oatmeal stout, anything like that, I would really recommend starting that, with the exception of the imperial. Okay, the imperial porter, the imperial stout. That just means basically higher alcohol, dumbing it down, but that's basically what it means. And it needs to age a little longer. With that exception, darker beers will hide more flavors than lighter beers. So if you're a fan of the stouts or porters, go for it. Man, you're good to go. A really good one to start off with is the brown ale. A lot of the time they're called the English nuts, and because they're a real easy beer to brew. They've got complex flavors, but yet they're simple enough where people will still drink them if they're just used to the Coors or something like that, So, so darker is better to start off with, but you don't have to. If you don't like dark beer, don't brew dark beer, But the reason I brought that up is I would brew the same beer a couple times, just to make sure you get it. And the more you brew it, the more you'll like it. So, because you'll tweak it here and there to get for there. The next thing is freshness counts. If you buy some hops or some yeast, you don't want it sitting around for a long time. You brew it as quick as you can get as possible. If you live in a town with more than about 15, 20,000 people, odds are you got a beer store. Odds are, So, and do not be afraid to ask them questions. Those people work in the store because they like that stuff. They don't mind asking the stupid questions. Please ask them all the questions you want. It's great. In the Dallas area, it's North Dallas. I think it's North Dallas. I think in North Dallas. It's the Preston Beltline area. You guys will know where that's at. It's called Homebrew Headquarters. Those guys are great. And I've been brewing a long time, and I still ask them questions because they are way more experienced than me. And if I want to try a new technique, I'll ask them, am I right in my mind? And they'll say, yeah, you were, except you might want to this because of this. There you go. Or if you're looking for a particular yeast or hop and they don't have it, they're out for your recipe, you can ask them and they'll say, this is real similar to that one you're looking for there. So it's great help. So ask them, but freshness counts when you're having your beer. Saying that, some of the stuff lasts a long time. So the next thing is, some of the stuff won't make sense, but it will later. When you're chilling your wort, we'll go over all what it is. The quicker you chill it, the better it will be. Less chance of off flavors, and you clearer your beer. Okay, we'll go over that in more detail later. When you are fermenting your beer, steady, constant temperature is the best. Now, sometimes you'll have two separate temperatures when you ferment, but during both of those, stable is that one temperature. If your yeast says, let's say you got an ale yeast and it says, this yeast is optimal at 74 degrees, is your optimal there. But the room you have it in is 77. Okay, I would rather have it 77 constant the whole way, or 78 constant the whole way, than going from, 72 to 76 like this the whole time. So the steadier the temperature, the better. But if you can't, so just do it the best you can. And if people talk about two-stage fermenting, when I started brewing in the 90s, it was two-stage fermenting. And I'll go over all that later. Basically, we ferment it for a week, your beer, your wort, that one. You put it in another container, you go another week or two, however long. And that's a two-stage, you're doing it twice. Now, most of the time, it's a single stage. If you two-stage, it's for usually one of two reasons. One, the biggest, is it makes it clear. A lot more stuff settles out. Two, it's for added flavors. Your second stage, you might add some chocolate. You might add some, if you want, I'm just throwing stuff out. Cherries, coconuts, whatever, okay? Last year I brewed, it was actually pretty good. I brewed a half batch, so a 2.5 gallon batch. It was a chocolate, a cream, chocolate, coconut porter. Stout. It was pretty good, a lot of flavors. But the coconut and the chocolate went in the secondary. So that's what that. And two things that people overlook quite a bit, they keep forgetting, is one, simple is better. The simpler you have it, the better. Okay? And that's even with big, huge breweries. The simpler, the better. And they know that too. People have a tendency when they start brewing to get more complex. Just always remember, simpler is better. And two, good notes. Always keep good notes. Every time you brew, get yourself, next time you go to Walmart, get yourself one of those 50-cent spiral notebooks, and that's your brew log. When you brew, you put everything you did. You put your recipe in, your date, the date you started your fermenter, the day you ended your fermenter, the date you bottled, what you did in the brew, everything, and then notes how it tasted afterwards. And then you can go back and tweak it later, and the next time you brew, if you really liked it, you replicate it. So keep that's called a brew log. And you can do the same thing if you want to do it online. There are apps for your phone, for your tablets. If you want to go that way, that's perfectly okay. There's software. Beersmith is probably the biggest one out there. And I have Beersmith, and I love Beersmith. I keep Beersmith on a laptop in my kitchen or outside when I brew. That's all my notes. That's everything I have. That is my brew log. As long as you back it up. So we're going to go over a couple different things. First, there are 3 basic ways you can brew. Okay, brew beer. I'm not talking about ales, lagers, when the actual brewing itself. Okay. The first way is basically an all-in-one extract kit. Just literally, everything's in this kit. And this is it here. I will be brewing, and I'm going to be brewing all 3, okay, ways. So I picked this up here. You can see this here. And this here is an export stout. With this, take this lid off here. Come on, there we go. You have your instructions, and they give you your yeast. And inside here, your hops and everything is here. Okay, this is like the Mr. Beer kit, only bigger. Basically, all as you do is with this kit here is you sanitize your fermenter, and that's usually, it's either one of those glass carboys, those glass water bottles you see, or a 5-gallon bucket. I would actually go to a 6-gallon bucket. You'll understand why in a minute. And what on top of the bucket or on top of the carboy, there's a hole. There's a hole automatically on the carboy, but you put a hole. And this is an airlock. Okay, let me get this here so you can see it. Okay, this here goes in, locks in your container. This goes in here. Now, you get it to this point right here, you drop it in your sanitizing with your other 2 things you have in a kit. You drop it in your sanitizer. until you're ready to use it. After your wort's chilled and you do your thing, it's cooled down to your temperature, you add your yeast, I'll go over all that later. You put this in here and there's a little mark right here. You fill your water up to that line. You take this, you drop it in. Now, that will float inside, you know, right about there, okay? And then you put your cap on top, okay? And they got tiny, tiny holes here. What this does is when the gas comes out, this bobber here will let the gas come up and spit out, but it cannot let the water in because of this here. Now there's another kind that's like the S, like this. I like these better because they're easier to clean. The others work fine. There's nothing wrong with them. If you get it, there's nothing. This is just easier to clean. That's it. Now, good thing about these is these are multi-purpose. If you make your own sauerkraut, okay, you can get one of those half-gallon mason jars. Easy as this. Put your cabbage in, mash it, add your salt, follow recipe, mash it, mash it, mash it. Put the lid on, make a hole, put this on, put some just water in here, throw it in your fridge, and you can make some homemade sauerkraut. So that's a side note there. And then you just let it age for 5 to 9 days, depending on. And you say, well, how long do you know? The reason I say 6 gallon, if you're making a 5-gallon batch, you're gonna have foam on top. It's called trube. That's all your foam and crud on top. That'll get there. This thing's gonna become violent. Literally, after about 12 hours, 24, depending on the temperature and your yeast, this thing's gonna be hearing about that loud and that fast. It's gonna be going. When that starts going, as a general rule, now everything's different, follow your yeast packet and your instructions. When you get 1 bop less every minute, usually it's okay. But I would still sit and wait a little bit. Don't stir anything at that point. But with this recipe, all you do is, what I do for this type of 5-gallon recipe is I boil 5 gallons of water, or 3 gallons of water, okay? Boil it. And the nice thing about the bucket compared to the bottle is you got a spigot at the bottom for later to make it easier. So it's your bottling bucket too. I put 3 gallons of boiling water inside the bucket, okay? And if the recipe calls for any type of sugar or corn sugar or anything like that, I add it at that time, stir it. Then this is sitting on the stove in a thing of boiling water, not directly on the bottom of the pan. You know, I just crinkle up some tin foil and this sits in some water. This is a syrup. It's a heavy syrup, just to make it flow better. And then what I do is pour it in the 3 gallons, mix it when it's smooth, get 2 gallons of cool water. And usually what I do is my filtered water I make, I put it in the fridge so it's nice and cold. I add it to my fermenting bucket. What that does, it'll bring the temperature down quicker. And normally, between adding this and the 2 gallons of water to the 5, the temperature is almost down to your ideal range, okay? And every packet of yeast will say, and your instructions will say about what temperature you want. So, and if it's lager, it's obviously lower starting than that. So, that's it. You put it and let it ferment. After a week, you bottle it. If you're bottling, you wait 2 to 3 weeks, you're done. Because that's natural carbonation. You're making your carbonation, you know, instant or 2 to 3 weeks in the bottle itself. Now, if you add CO2, you can drink the beer, you know, 1 to 3 days after fermentation. So people that keg their own, that's why they do it. They don't have to wait. So that's that style. Now, the next style is called an extract kit. Okay, here's your syrup. Syrup just like this, with the exception, and I'll be brewing this style too. This does not have any hops or anything in it here. It's just your syrup. All this is your grain. But the reason you know, whatever you're using, you know, most of the time it's barley, wheat, whatever. You're getting the sugars out of them for the yeast to eat, and that makes alcohol and CO2. So simple as that. But this is just basically a concentrated liquid, okay, with no hop flavor added in. This says your hop flavor added in. So with this, you boil. With this kind of kit, you have to boil on the stove for about an hour. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink here. I apologize. Some good iced tea just picks the day up. So, and then you add your hops during your beer. This is just, this is Fugel hops, 1 ounce. You'll get them in different containers. This is, put up here so you can kind of see it right there from, this is from Hop Union. A lot of times you'll see hops added generally 4 different times. Most recipes will have 3, but some will have 4. The first is immediately when the boil starts. Those are your bittering hops. That's what gives you your beer your bitter flavor, okay? Different hops have different bittering units, so that's what you gotta watch. Then about 10-15 minutes left of the boil, those are your flavoring hops, okay? And then if you add it about 5 minutes before the boil, those are your aroma hops. So there you go. Now the fourth one is that flame out, okay? And that's when you turn the burner off, okay? And those hops are generally to jack your IBUs up to make your IPAs and stuff like that. Your India Pale Ales, the really hoppy beers. But sometimes they're used for other reasons, but that's generally what it is. Once in a while you'll add hops to your fermenting buckets too, so follow your recipes. And then once you start brewing, you'll make your own and understand. But that's basically it. You add your hops during the boil, you cool it down, and you do the same. That's it, okay? Now, the third type is all grain. Now, this is, I'm going to be doing what's called a partial mash. When you mash a beer, that is just soaking grain at a certain temperature. Simple as that. I'll be doing a partial mash with added this to this. But all grain is taking 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds of cracked grains like this and soaking it before you add this in your hops before you start boiling. That's it. So I'll be adding that. But all grain is you're soaking this before you even start your hour and a half boil, depending on the recipe. That's it. Those are the 3 main styles. Now, I'm going to be kicking this up a notch, as the old saying goes, just a little bit. This is an export stout. I'm going to be making this into a coffee stout. And I want to do that to show you you can make really good different flavored beers with this or the Mr. Beer kit pretty simply. And all this we're going to doing is after this is brewed, it's fermented, and when we bottle it, we add our bottling sugar at that time. I'm going to be adding a concentrated coffee. That's it. And what I'm actually thinking of doing is, a buddy of mine made this a year and a half, 2 years ago. You can get that coffee, that mudslide coffee. It's kind of like a chocolate flavored coffee. I think I'm going to be using that because that will add a chocolatey overtone, just a little chocolate. You really don't know this for a more complex flavor. Oh, we got a little friend here, so come on. That's one of my cats here wanting to join us there. But just so you know, you can add a really complex. Now, if you add coffee to beer, I really recommend what's called cold brewing. I got a video. If you go to my videos and you search for cold brewing, you'll see how easy it is to make cold brew beer. And I make cold brew beer all the time for iced coffee. But it's better to cold brew the beer to get rid of some of your bitterness, because that bitterness could throw your other bitters off a little bit. You don't have to, but you can. Now, a couple things when you brew. Talk about bottles, basically. Anytime you get a bottle and you buy a beer, a twist top you can't use. Throw them out or recycle, whatever you do, okay? Any flip top, save, because you clean them out and you can reuse the flip top one. So save your bottles. Now, some people have these clear ones here. These are fine too. There's nothing wrong with these. You have to get new caps a lot of the times. These, when you're bottling, they're okay because it's rock hard and it's good to go. Multi-purpose, anytime I make homemade root beer, I use these bottles. Sodas have a tendency to explode these because there's so much sugar in it. So homemade root beer, I use these. So those are your bottles. Now there's another kind that I have. I got one over there, but I'm not gonna, like the flip tops. Okay, those are great too. Those are my preferred type. Okay, but I always brew a lot of these since I give a lot of beer away, to make sure I give beer away, because I don't want to give those expensive flip top bottles away for obvious reasons. Now I give some of those to my close friends because I know I'll be getting it back. Another thing you might hear about when you're brewing is a hop sack. It's just a little, it's made out of cheesecloth material. It's tied at one end and it's open on the other end. You drop your hops in, you tie it closed, you put it in the water. You don't want it tight, you want it pretty loose in here because that hop will really expand in the water because these are pelletized, they're not whole hops. And then when you're done, you just pull it out, you don't have to strain it. Just makes it easier for later. You get your yeast, you'll get your yeast two different ways, okay? This is the Nottingham ale yeast. And what I'm going to be brewing for this one that I'm doing the partial mash I was telling you, I'm going to be making a nut brown ale. It's a good overall, good flavored beer. That's what I'll be brewing. And that's what this is. You'll get it like this, or you will be getting it in like a vial. Either or. These tend to last a little longer than those vials. So, but a lot of times your beer calls for a specific type, and usually there's others you can, but sometimes there's not. So sometimes you don't have a choice for anything like that. Now, because not all sugar is the same, if recipe asks to add sugar, if it's not says table sugar, by default they mean corn sugar. Okay, it gets down to the molecule level, why you use it and everything like that. But if it just says add your sugar, it's corn sugar, it's not regular sugar. If you're gonna use sugar in yours, I really suggest making a simple syrup. Do a quick search on how to make a simple syrup before you use it, just for that reasoning there. Bottling, two different main kind of bottlers. Here's this one here, put the bottle in, put it in, caps it. This has a magnet in it that holds it, you're done. This type is a little bit faster than the other type, your butterfly. Doesn't matter. Usually if you get a kit, you'll get a butterfly. I picked that up years ago in the 90s, mid-90s I picked that up. It's still going. I just prefer it to the butterfly. That's personal preference. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, I did buy a kit. You can buy beer kits. And this one is from Northern Brewer. If you're wondering about buying a kit, because when you start brewing, you might want to buy a kit where it has all the little stuff when you start off with. Your local brew store will have kits too. These guys will have one, Northern Brewer. I've ordered from them a few times. Great people, great everything. Here's another one I've ordered from before, More Beer. Great, and they will all have starting kits. Like here's one of the starting kits here. Now, when I talk about a brew kit, in this here, you can see right here, it came from them. I'll show you the label. So you can see there. What this had in it, and I'll show you, this had, you know, my extract, grain I had, because this had a little bit of grain to make it a partial mash. It had my yeast. It had my hops. It had my hop sack. Now, it was like I'd order, it was like an extra, not even $1. It was 5 ounces of corn sugar, and this is for my bottling at the end, in here. And this was all in one kit, one price, delivered to me, done. If you're not gonna brew for a week or two, I really suggest taking your hops and your yeast out and putting them in the fridge. So I just got this delivered yesterday. I've been wanting to do this video a while, but I've been waiting for it. They delivered quick. I didn't order it. It's not on them. Don't worry about that. So that's basically it for brewing. We will be going into this next, what to do with this. Now, one thing I recommend doing is if you don't drink a lot of beer but you want to, make half batches. Just make half. This makes a full batch, unfortunately. Another thing about going all grain, you don't have to worry about it. What you can do is if you find a friend, have them come over and go halves. Each get a case of beer. Good to go. So don't be afraid with the extract kits or anything like that. They're fine, especially if you're starting off. That is the way to go. Very few people start off with all grain immediately. Very few. Some do. Very few. But that's basically it. There's more equipment we'll go over later. The only thing you really need to start off would be some kind of boiling container, something to take a temperature, a long stirring stick, a fermenting bucket, which is cheaper than the carboy, once in a while. Most of those kits will come with a bucket. You're fine. You'll need bottles, and that's basic what you need. And your sanitizer, whatever you're using for sanitizing, whether your homemade bleach unscented, or what I recommend is the Ida 4 or the Star San. I really recommend those. If you're going to order a kit, because what you can do is a lot of times when you order a beer kit or go to your local store, a lot of times they will throw one of these in with you the first time. And very simple, they'll have some stuff you can make it a partial mash if you want, and everything like that. So everything's in there at one time, so you can get brewing and everything like that. But that's basically it. This little longer video, but just an overview, looking up and down how to brew your own beer. And the next video we do in this series, we'll be making this here, and I hope that to be within the next couple weeks. We should be pretty good, and I should be able to start making some more videos more regular. And I'm sorry about the delay. You guys know about me closing down my computer shop and everything like that, so I can spend more time on the farm out here. So closing that up. Some of my clients know I'm taking over, so I'm starting to go out a little more to get that done, everything too. So it was just September, October, real busy time for me. So other than that, everybody have a great day, and thank you for watching. Subscribe. Any questions, please ask. And again, this wasn't everything. This is just a real overview. All you beer purists are gonna dig this apart. You forgot this. You forgot this. I know. So we'll get deeper into stuff later. So that's it. I hope everybody has a great day.